Welcome to another episode of ICU Doc Talk. I am a anesthesiologist and critical care doctor in the United States, and I work at a major academic American center. And this is a podcast where I talk about medicine, I talk about politics, and I always talk about books and history and lots of other stuff that I find interesting. So thanks for joining me again for another episode. In this episode, I will be talking about every book I read in 2024. That's what we're talking about today. That's it. It's a lot of books. I'm going to move fast because it's like 90 plus books. I'm going to start with nonfiction books, just nonfiction, and then I will move to fiction. So if you don't really care about my fiction books, I read a lot of like sci-fi and fantasy. I also read classics and stuff. You can pop off if you don't care about the fiction reads. So that's it. Just going to go through these books one at a time. And I did this last year and people liked it. And it takes a bit and it can be exhausting, but bear with me. Let's do it. So I do get people all the time asking how I have time to read so many books. So I am not a speed reader. I don't think I read particularly fast. The way I read books, I probably half and half actually read books and half listen to audiobooks. And I always, the way I'm able to do it is I read every day. I'm always reading a little bit here and there. Like, reading a little bit in the morning as I'm looking up my patients or something on my phone, or I'm reading a little bit while I'm having a snack at lunch, whatever. And then I'm reading a little bit before bedtime. And then I'm listening to audiobooks at 2 times speed whenever I'm commuting or doing housework or things like that. That's it. I don't think I guess I listen to them quickly. But I don't think I read particularly fast, but I'm just consistent. I read every single day. I probably read about 45 to an hour a day cumulatively throughout the day. So that's how I do it. And anyway, that's it. Let's get started. We're gonna start with nonfiction books. So the first book I'm going to talk about is called The Value of Everything by Mariana Mazzucato. I've mentioned this book on the podcast. This is one of the best economic books I've ever read. You should read it. If you've never read an economics books, it will go over the history of economics from Marx to Ricardo, Adam Smith, and then making the way up into the 20th century with Keynes and neoliberalism and everything. It is such a sweeping, great book. One of her main arguments is that the government does create value, and she demonstrates that perfectly. Okay. So the next time someone says, hey, I love capitalism, which is a stupid thing to say because capitalism can be a billion different things. Someone's about to say something dumb when they're like, I love capitalism because I have an iPhone, right? So that's a dumb statement for many reasons. I won't get into it. But you can explain to them that almost all the technologies in their phone were created by the government, whether that's GPS or touchscreen technology or the transistors. Almost all of the basic technology in that phone was created by DARPA and government investment, and either the government directly or government funded, subsidized. Anyway, very good book to read. You need to read it. Highly recommend it. Next book is Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution by Eli Mistal. This book is awesome. So he's very vulgar and uncouth, which is like part of his strength. He's hilarious. He's a funny guy, and he's a lawyer. He basically tears apart constitutional originalism, right? The argument that like, oh, you got to go back to what the founding fathers want. People that are going to make that argument, they're going to twist it however they want. Basically, for someone to say that's unconstitutional, I don't engage with conversations like that anymore because you can twist that in any way you want. And constitutional originalism is basically a backdoor to just justify anything and to have just anything you want. Why would you even want to return to the original intent of a lot of what the framers said? There's a lot of ambiguities in the Constitution and literally language in there that kind of codifies slavery to an extent. Anyway, you'll learn a lot from this book. I highly recommend it. Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution by Eli Mistal. Next book is a history book called The Battle Cry of Freedom, The Civil War Era by James McPherson. This is about the American Civil War. It's absolutely phenomenal. I cannot recommend it more. If you know nothing about the Civil War, which I didn't know a whole lot before I read this book, this is a great place to start. The politics before the Civil War, why it broke out, the politics after, everything. I mean, it is such a great, just broad view of everything that happened, why it happened, what led up to it. It does focus on the battles and stuff like that, which don't interest me quite as much. But it's not all about that. Okay, it's not just about the battles of Civil War. It's the politics and why it happened and lessons learned. Highly, highly recommend The Battle Cry of Freedom. The next book I've definitely mentioned on this show. It's called Techno-Feudalism: What Killed Capitalism by Yanis Varoufakis. If I had to rank all the books I'm going to talk about today, this would definitely be top 10 book that you should read. Yanis Varoufakis is a Greek economist who I highly respect. I've read probably 5 of his books. He's an amazing thinker. You need to read him. You really need to read him. Techno-feudalism is all about the tectonic change that is happening where capitalists are being captured by what he calls cloudalists, people that, like tech companies that rent, they've become rent-seeking institutions that they rent their attention platforms to capitalists to then make money, and they actually don't produce value. They're just rent-seeking rent-seeking institutions. He gives you an amazing overview of American economics, mixes in a ton of stuff. You definitely need to read this book. Techno-Feudalism: What Killed Capitalism by Yanis Varoufakis. Next book is Naomi Klein's recent release called Doppelganger: A Trip into the Mirror World. Naomi Klein is a influential leftist voice. She wrote a very influential book called Shock Doctrine, which if you haven't read, you should read that. And this book is about kind of neo-fascism and how neo-fascism is kind of the doppelganger of how we even operate to begin with. And interesting book. I think it was, it's not going to change anybody's minds. It's for people that are, it's emotionally cathartic for all the distress that you may be feeling about what's going on in American politics. It's a good book. I do recommend it. All right, next up we have The Heart of Everything, that is The Untold Story of Red Cloud, an American Legend by Bob Drury and Tom Calvin. This is a book about a Native American named Red Cloud who fought in the United States government in like the 1800s. This book was so boring to me. It had a really fractured narrative about Red Cloud, and it was really tedious and boring to get through. I had a hard time staying engaged. Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot. So I just kind of went, the book kind of fizzled out for me, and I went and read some stuff on Wikipedia about Red Cloud. So I don't necessarily recommend it just because it was really dry and boring. Next we have Democracy Awakening: Notes on the State of America by Heather Cox Richardson. She's gained a lot of prominence in social media as a voice of reason with liberals, with what's going on right now. I do like her. This book, I've read like at least a dozen like post-mortem Trump critiques, and this is one of them. And she does a good job. She goes into ins and outs and the rise and threats of Trumpism. She gives a nice succinct review of American history and its conflicts. It's not a vital read. Unless you've never read a book like this, then you should read it. But I've read like a gazillion books like it, so you could skip it if you've read a book like that. Next book is How Civil Wars Start and How to Stop Them by Barbara F. Walter. Not Barbara Walters, a different person. Very good book. I learned a lot. It's about ethnic factionalization, what causes civil wars. She talks about civil wars all over the place, and she talks about what they look like and how they come about. Basically, it's when a dominant group becomes disillusioned with the government and feels the trajectory of their power slipping when they factionalize, usually along ethnic lines. When that happens, the moderate bulk of the populace then falls into a black hole of extremism, and they start supporting populist and nativist leaders. Social media is used to normalize the rhetoric and radicalize prior moderates. Like that's the changing of the Overton window. And then you have decentralized paramilitary groups that execute guerrilla tactics and terrorism. You have disinformation that promulgates to obscure who is responsible for violence and the intent. It's really good. It's also terrifying. And it obviously parallels what's going on in American politics. I do recommend that one, How Civil Wars Start. Next book is Shadow Play: Behind the Lines of and Under Fire, the inside story of Europe's last war by Tim Marshall. Tim Marshall, he's published lots of books about geopolitics. He's a journalist. This book is about Kosovo War and kind of breakup of Yugoslavia. This is about, he was there during the Kosovo War in the 90s. So this talks a lot about Yugoslavia breaking up and how that resulted, going into Croat and Serbian history and Kosovo. It's very good. He's also a great writer, very engaging. And if you would like to know about that, more about that, this is a good place to start. Shadow Play by Tim Marshall. Next book is called Super Communicators: How to Unlock the Secret Language of Connection by Charles Duhigg. It's a really decent book about how to connect with someone and understand what kind of conversation you're having with people. Like, is it a problem-solving conversation, or is it simply about, like emotional connection or venting or talking about identities? And these are difficult things to tease apart. And he does a good job of helping you. Really like that book. I think it would be good for anybody. Super Communicators. Next is To End All Wars, A Story of Loyalty and Rebellion, 1914 through 1918 by Adam Hochschild. This would be a top 10 recommendation. This is about America during World War I, how America got into World War I, how it got involved, where the Espionage Act came from, which was basically just a way for the government to crack down on war dissenters, to just put people in jail for saying that we shouldn't go to war, right? Like, what's his face? The socialist, the famous socialist, Upton Sinclair. All right, he was just thrown into prison because he thought we shouldn't go to war, and that was because of the creation of the Espionage Act and Sedition Act. Oh, actually, I just realized I was confusing that book with a different book by the same author, Adam Hochschild, which is called American Midnight. So I'll just talk about these two books at the same time. There's To End All Wars, which is about World War I from Europe, from England's perspective. And then there's American Midnight from the Americans' perspective during the same time. Same author, Adam Hochschild. You should read these books together. You will learn so much about what America is and all the things that went into what happened with World War I. Really recommend. Adam Hochschild, I've read about 4 or 5 of his books. He's an amazing historical writer. Next up, we have Material World, the 6 Raw Materials That Shape Modern Civilization. It's by Ed Conway and Edmund Conway. No, it's the same guy, Ed Conway. Really well-researched, engaging book about the modern materials that run the world and the geopolitics that control those materials. The 6 materials that are discussed are sand, salt, sodium chloride, iron, copper, oil, and lithium, where they're mined, where they're from, and the delicate supply webs that everybody depends on in a globalized economy, an open globalized economy with safe trade. Really good book. Really good book. Material World. Next up, this was a very popular book, came out last year. It's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It was a good book. And basically the take home is children should not have smartphones and social media till they are 16, which I totally agree with. He talks about the rewiring that is that's happened to Gen Z between 2010 and 2015, about depression and self-harm and anxiety that are undoubtedly higher in these generations, and how social media and having access to phones at early ages is very likely harmful for them. I didn't find the book particularly scientifically rigorous, like he kind of acts like it is. I mean, it's a pop psychology, pop science book, but I still recommend it, and I overall agree with a lot of what the author said. Called The Anxious Generation. Next is Nixonland, The Rise of a President and the Fracturing of America by Rick Perlstein. This would be a top 10 recommendation. It's a long book, but this is about the politics of the 1960s and the rise of Nixon. Basically, the politics that are going on in America right now are a rebranding and a worse version of what happened in the 1960s. We have never escaped the politics of the 1960s. We've just gone around the mad merry-go-round of the exact same culture wars that have only deepened, only worsened, with more fracturing and more polarization. And Trump is basically a Richard Nixon, but way worse. He's basically a dictator. He's the same thing as Nixon without the checks, right? Nixon had to resign, whereas Trump got reelected, right? Because we're in such a more polarized and a fractionalized political landscape much more than then. Very, very, very good book. It's a must-read. Called Nixonland. This author also wrote a book called Reaganland, which is about Ronald Reagan, which I have not read, but which I definitely will. These are long books, so just keep that in mind. Next is Why Civil Resistance Works, The Strategic Logic of Nonviolent Conflict by Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stephen. This book is about how they look at over 100-year history of nonviolence versus violent insurgencies all throughout the world. And how effective they are. And these authors conclude that nonviolence resistance is much more effective and much more durable than violent resistance. There's like a lower barrier of nonviolent resistance that opens doors for more of the public across racial lines and ideological lines that can help a movement kind of chip away at power and influence over a regime who has control. rather than violent resistance. Violent resistance can work, but it usually results in rebranded authoritarian rule. And you see that all the time with revolutions over the last hundreds of years. And usually violent resistance can also spark, when a violent resistance does something violent, it usually sparks countermeasures by the regime in control that make things worse. A tragic and classic example is the Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel and the counter-reaction that has had on the Palestinian people. This is a very good book. I found it pretty rigorous, they explain exactly how they go through their research. So I would check it out. Why Civil Resistance Works by Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stevens. Next we have Travelers in the Third Reich by Julia Boyd. This is a really interesting book. It's about, obviously, Nazi Germany, which I read about all the time. This is a book about the collection. This is before World War II, right? This is after the Nazi Party came in control in 1933 and was trying to court the world that they were trying to convince the world that they were, this great new thing that was that was on the global stage and happening. And the Olympics were there, right, in Nazi Germany. And this is during that time, and this book is about letters and correspondence of people that visited Nazi Germany and their thought. Even W.E.B. Du Bois went to Nazi Germany and shared some thoughts about it, and they're very interesting. And lots of people were really kind of confused. So was this a socialist society? And lots of people were very impressed. People didn't really care about the anti-Semitism, or just kind of like looked the other way on it, because plenty of people were anti-Semitic at the time. Really interesting book. In fact, such an interesting book, it really shows you how the tolerance of fascist regimes and how the public can accept it and can be confused by it or even kind of like it. Really, really good book. Travelers in the Third Reich by Julia Boyd. Next is The Religion of Whiteness, How Racism Distorts Christian Faith by Michael Emerson and Clem E. Bracey II. This is basically how most Christians actually worship their own white skin. About 2/3 of actual white Christians actually worship whiteness, which these authors call the religion of whiteness. They talk about how Christians cherry-pick the Bible to clearly protect concepts of white nationalism. They talk about betrayal trauma by black Christians during George Floyd protests and things like that. This is a good book. I've read books like it. It's obviously very biased and stuff, but I agree with their conclusions. Another book that's like this that I thought was really good is called White Too Long, which is a really compassionate book by an author named Robert P. Jones. If you're interested in this topic, I recommend both these two books, Religion of Whiteness and White Too Long. They're basically about white Christian nationalism and how they don't look anything like actual Christianity. Next, we have The Power of Geography, 10 Maps That Reveal the Future of Our World by Tim Marshall. This is a geopolitics book. Tim Marshall, I just mentioned, he's the guy who read that book about Yugoslavia called The Shadow Play. I read another book by him. And this is just like a slice of current geopolitics. Again, I think he's a really knowledgeable journalist. If you're looking for a geopolitics book and you haven't read one, this would be a good place to start about current, political state of geopolitics. Another influential writer in this vein is Peter Zeihan. I've read his books, United Nations, or Disunited Nations, and The End of the World is Just the Beginning. So if you're interested in geopolitics, you could start with those two authors, Tim Marshall and Peter Zeihan. Peter Zeihan's become a really big name in both the left and the right, and he's an interesting guy, and he's got an interesting take on a lot of stuff, and so I do like to follow some of the stuff that he says. Next is called Spain in Our Hearts, Americans in the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939 by Adam Hochschild. He's a historian I mentioned earlier who wrote American Midnight and that other book about World War I that I'm forgetting the name of. This book is about the Spanish Civil War. I think everybody should study the Spanish Civil War. It's one of the most interesting, important wars of the 20th century. I mean, what was being fought about was amazing. And this book is it's a story about sympathetic Americans who went to Spain to fight the fascist movement against Franco. And also how anarchism actually kind of started in Barcelona. There wasn't any money. There wasn't class distinctions. Rich people stopped acting rich and flaunting the richness. It didn't last very long because the communists shut that down. The communists didn't care about anarchism. And communists helped to fund the Republicans poorly. And then everybody else basically supported Franco. Obviously, Hitler did, and Mussolini, and America did by default. FDR was like, we're not getting involved in the Spanish Civil War. But what you have happening is you have Texaco that helped to give Franco all of his money, or excuse me, all of his oil, and then GM and Ford gave about 12,000 trucks to the Franco regime. So America supported the fascist regime of Franco. FDR obviously knew this was happening. So, if anyone wonders, did America ever directly fund a fascist regime? Of course we did, and it was Francisco Franco. Anyway, Hochschild is a very gifted storyteller, and I highly recommend this book. You need to, if you don't know anything about the Spanish Civil War, you should. You definitely should. You should start with this one, Spain in Our Hearts by Adam Hochschild. All right, moving along. We're doing it. I'm getting through them. With Spain in Our Hearts, when I read that book, I kind of went off on a tangent of a thread, a vein of different books, because George Orwell was in the Spanish Civil War, right? So everybody in the Spanish Civil War who wasn't Spanish, like Americans that went and fought, they did it on their own accord, right? None of these nations were joined in with the more leftist Republican fighters. But you have the international brigades. You have a bunch of people from all over the world that went and helped to fight against fascism and against Franco. And George Orwell, the author of 1984, was one of these people. And he was there, and he fought, and he got shot in the neck. And he wrote a book called Homage to Catalonia, which is my next book to talk about, which is written by George Orwell. And he talks about his experience there and about how he's a socialist. George Orwell is very interesting because he, 1984 is clearly a critique, which I also reread this year, 1984. It's clearly a critique on the Soviet regime, 1984, and so is Animal Farm, which I also read this year. Again, it's clearly a critique on that, but but he was also a self-proclaimed socialist. So it's complicated. Just because he wrote a book that was clearly a critique of the Soviet Union doesn't mean he was a fascist, right? And his books, 1984, is more a commentary about how authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and how single-party rule can behave. To me, that's the major take-home of 1984. So I Homage to Catalonia and Spain in Our Hearts, I think, are really, really great books to read, and along with 1984. You can read those three books and just really learn a lot and will really help you think a lot. And then I went in this vein even more. I read a book by Emma Goldman called My Further Disillusionment in Russia. Emma Goldman was an anarchist around the turn of the century in the United States. I think she was from Lithuania originally. She was so radical, and she tried to have a guy assassinated. What was his name? Frick. He was some politician or some oligarch or something. I don't remember. He tried to have him assassinated, which she failed. But anyway, she was too extreme, and she was an anarchist, and she got deported, and she went to Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution to be like, oh, let's see what the Bolshevik utopian communist dream is like. And she went there, and she was very disappointed that it was just, I quote, she said, the regime, it was basically a scene change from the Romanovs to Lenin. Lenin just made himself a dictator. And that you'll find her account in My Further Disillusionment in Russia, which I'm really happy I read. All right, next book is called A City on Mars by Kelly Weinersmith and Zach Weinersmith. I mentioned this in my podcast last week in more in detail, but this is a great book about space geeks who know a lot about space, a lot about the economics and the feasibility of colonizing space and going to space. And they go over all the arguments, and they basically say it's pointless at this time in humanity's current state to try to colonize or mine anything from space. It is not worth it to do it anyway, and there is severe data lacking of how space affects children, women, being pregnant in space, that it's just a foolhardy endeavor to try to colonize space at this point in humanity's current state. And they make a very compelling argument, and they do it with humor, and it's great. It's a great book, A City on Mars. I highly recommend it. Next book was a really good book. I highly recommend everybody read it. It's called Of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. This is by Richard Reeves. I was skeptical going into this book, and this book is about how men in a certain arena have become disadvantaged, and that disadvantage is that women have pulled them ahead of them as degree earners. Women have more higher education now than men. And that is a fact. And he talks about that disadvantage. Now, he's very careful. He doesn't deny sexism or patriarchy or misogyny or the gender pay cap. And he's very careful and lays that all out. And the book is about how men have become victims of also patriarchy itself. And this book fits along, I think, along with feminist thought as well. It's not contrarian, this book, despite what the title might sound like. And he talks about how the American left largely ignores the problem of economic and job loss that average men have clearly and undoubtedly experienced. And for the left, it hasn't been politically correct or expedient to talk about how half the population has a terrible time graduating from school and experiencing wage stagnation. So the left just ignores that, and then the right exploits and manipulates men. And you see that in how men have been voting. Men are a big part of it, and the left just totally ignores that. And we're all suffering for it. So men are the greatest perpetrators of crimes, murder, rape. They suffer the most from diseases of death and despair. And this author goes through that data, and he has great solutions that I don't think anybody can argue with, particularly people on the left. Men should be encouraged and helped by the state specifically to get jobs in nursing, healthcare, social work, education, and administration. You can have a grant that targets men to in these sectors. Can you imagine how many men would support social democratic policies that specifically address the exact ways in which they are currently disadvantaged? It would turn politics on its head. And maybe men would stop supporting fascist politicians like Donald Trump, right? Really, really good book. It changed my mind about a lot of this stuff. It's called Of Boys and Men. I highly recommend that you are open-minded about it, particularly if you're a left-leaning person like myself, and read it, because it's good. All right, next up we have Democracy or Else, How to Survive in America in 10 Easy Steps by John Favreau, John Lovett, Tommy Vider. These are guys who do a famous podcast, political podcast, which is, I forget what it's called. You've probably heard of them. I don't know. These are big names. Anyway, it's a funny book, a very cursory review of how the political process works with some experiences that they share about activism and getting involved in politics. I personally learned nothing new with this book because it's very rudimentary, but it's fun. And it's a great book for a young adult or someone who knows very little about American politics, like someone who lives outside of the U.S. I would recommend it for that. But if you're very politically aware, you're not going to get anything out of the book other than a little humor. That's called Democracy or Else, How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps. Oh, okay. All right, we're getting there. Whew, that's a lot of books. All right, The Third Reich in Power by Richard J. Evans. I talked about the third book in this series last week. Or maybe 2 weeks ago. This is called The History of the Third Reich, the series, and this is called The Third Reich in Power and it's about it was about the domestic policies that the Nazi Party did before World War II. So this covers the area between how they got power and before they went to war. So this is all about domestic policy of an authoritarian regime that's doing reconstruction of their society. Fascinating, must read to understand how a political party went from fascist beginnings and then got into control, and then how it tried to restructure its society and became totalitarianism. Very, very good. Got to read it. Got to read the series. It's a must read. Next is Underground Empire, How America Weaponized the World Economy by Henry Farrell and Abraham Newman. It's a decent brief read about how the U.S. fell into near accidental control of an alleged decentralized internet infrastructure and then leveraged that monopoly into controlling and asserting global hegemony through international financial institutions like SWIFT. You'll get a nice update about the current cold technological war with China and how China has done everything to try to create its own tech hegemony to compete with the United States. And just this book really will bring your mind. Make no mistake about it. The current geopolitical strategism rests on who can control access to microprocessors and how tiny they can get them. TSMC, which is the world's largest that makes these, it's become a geopolitical lightning rod in Taiwan, right? And TSMC has also opened up a chip factory in Arizona, which definitely changes things. It's a good book. Really good book. I do recommend it. It's brief, and you'll learn a lot about current politics, geopolitics. Underground Empire. Next book is called These Truths, A History of the United States by Jill Lepore. This is just a book from the beginning of the United States to current. It's a huge, broad overview. She moves very quickly and really just covers everything of America. So so she moves fast. So if you're looking for a nice, broad, hey, what is the history of the United States? This is a great book to read. Great book to read. Doesn't go into too much detail with a lot of stuff, which can be frustrating because there's things you want to know about. But I highly recommend it. Really, really good book. Really balanced narrative and what she presents. Really good. Highly recommend it. These Truths. Next book, which is definitely a book I talked about, is called Inferno, The World at War, 1939 through 1945 by Max Hastings. There's plenty of World War II books out there. I've read a lot of them. This one's very good. It's just an overview. It's very good about all of World War II, the war stratagem and the conflicts. You get a lot of Pacific theater here, a ton of it, and as well as the Eastern. I don't know. If you're looking for a good World War II book, solid. I recommend it. Inferno by Max Hastings. Next book is called Being Wrong, Adventures in the Margin of Error by Catherine Schultz. This book is all about, I've read a lot of books like this, but it's just about understanding your cognitive errors, how you get there. Don't trust yourself. I've read a ton of books like that. It's really good. The next book that along those lines is called Fluke by Brian Klaas, he wrote a book called Incorruptible about how corrupted people are attracted to power, which is really good. I highly recommend that. Fluke is kind of a book, it's a lot of kind of anecdotes about what events are contingent events that kind of change the history of the world, and a lot of it comes by fluke. It's kind of a pop science book, but I did enjoy it. Next book is How America Works and Why It Doesn't by William Cooper. Pretty standard book about American politics. I've read a billion like it, but I did enjoy it. Just talking about the polarization, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing like too special to talk about, but I do recommend that as well if you haven't read a book like it. Following that is The Man Who Broke Capitalism by David Gelles. I highly recommend this book. This is a book. This is all about Jack Welch, who is the CEO of GE, who fundamentally changed that company, fired off everybody, concentrated the shareholder wealth, and basically destroyed the company. It doesn't even exist anymore. It got all broken up and bought up, and it concentrated the wealth of very few people. This is a trend in corporate America. Jack Welch didn't invent it, but he certainly perfected it. It's men like this who are definitely destroying the United States, and I highly recommend it. It's a must read. Next book is The Rise and Fall of Communism by Archie Brown. This is a book written from a Western perspective, of course, by a British historian about communism, and not just the Soviets, but every communist country, and how it came about with the Bolshevik Revolution, how it spread, and its demise. If you're looking for, it's a long book. If you're looking for a long overview about communism, you should read it. But again, keep in mind, it's a Western perspective, right? Next book is The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé. If you're not going to find an unbiased book about Palestine and Israel, but this book presents lots of historical evidence about, since 1948, the Israeli state has ethnically cleansed Palestine since that date and from then forward, and has been doing it ever since. And he presents a lot of historical data about it, and it's a depressing book, but it's kind of a must-read. Got to read it. Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. Next up is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Harari, which came out a long time ago. Big book, made a big splash. I never read it until now, and it's awesome. It's just great. It's kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different stuff about agriculture and the rise of humanity and what we've become today. And it's kind of an anthropological book. It's largely the musings of just someone who thinks a lot. But I do recommend it. I immediately read one of his more newer books called Nexus, by the same author, Yuval Harari. Not a good book. Okay, not a good book. Very, very, it's basically, I don't even think I finished it. It's really boring, really tedious. It's just his random musings again, and there's no insight here. There's no insight in this book. He has an entire chapter talking about how religions are different than scientific institutions, and talking about what a book is. It's really banal takes, and it's really just, there's no nuance. It's not a good book, and he's really just capitalizing on his success earlier. It's obviously a cash grab book. I do not recommend Nexus. Whew, okay. Oh my gosh, I have so many more books to do. I'm just looking at my list. Oh, okay. Let's keep going. Next book is Psychopolitics it's called Psychopolitics, Neoliberalism and New Technologies of Power by Byung-Chul Han. And this is a book obviously written by a Marxist. I didn't find this book to be very intellectually honest. He uses the same old kind of hiding behind jargon of Marxist theory to obscure what he's even talking about. I've read a lot of books like this. I've read a lot of Marxist writers. They all kind of do this same thing. And the problem with mentalities of books like this is you're either an acolyte of what he's talking about, and then if you disagree or have any questions, then you're just a Western propagandist, and there's no between. There's no room for dissent. It's just, I don't even. You can read it if you haven't read a lot of Marxist readers. You can read it. It's short, but I have a lot of problems with it. Moving on, How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. Really good book. Her main, she's a neuroscientist. Her main thing is there's no loci of emotions. Fear doesn't just sit in the amygdala. She thinks all that stuff is a myth. A facial expression, creating a bunch of AI technology to then read someone's facial expression and know what their emotions are, is, according to her, is really stupid because emotions are very complex. They're made up of the moment of its being experienced. It's a simulation of your body, and it is not just a frown, and it's not just a part in your brain where emotion is. Fear isn't right here, and or happiness isn't there. It's the entire conscious experience that creates emotions. Really, really good book. Highly recommend. How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. Next book is Why the West Rules for Now by Ian Morris. I found this book really. It's about why there's a lot of geographic determinism, like from Guns, Germs, and Steel, which I do like that book. I found this book really, really tedious and hard to get through, so I'm going to gloss over that. Okay, next one. The Singularity is Near, When We Will Merge with AI. This is by Ray Kurzweil, who's a famous futurist AI predicting guy. He thinks AI is right around the corner, like the singularity where we merge our consciousness. He thinks it's like 10 or 15 years off. He's been saying that for like 20 years. So it's just another iteration of all of his oohing and awing about technology and AI. It's a little too optimistic in terms of, I think, when things are going to happen, and also the positive impact of AI and augmented reality. There's going to be negative impacts as well. And it's something I greatly fear. But it's not bad. Next book is The Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria. I went into more detail a few weeks ago about this book. He spends a lot of time on the Dutch Revolution, a little bit of American Revolution. He talks a lot about the Industrial Revolution. He takes a different kind of take on revolutions. And he talks about how the American Revolution was more of a revolution of the aristocratic revolution that didn't actually change the social structure. And that the Industrial Revolution is really what changed America, which is a really interesting take. Excellent book. Next is Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen. This book, the author gives a scenario of how nuclear war could happen. It could happen 6 minutes. It could happen right now. And in 6 minutes, the decisions of very few people could destroy the world. And nuclear deterrence is not effective. And we are basically always on the verge at any moment of total annihilation. And it's a very, very hard book to read, but you should read it. Next one is Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present by Ruth Ben-Gia. This guy, a woman spends time talking about Pinochet and Hitler and Franco and fascist movements and making a lot of comparisons to Donald Trump. I didn't learn anything new, but it was a good book. I feel she should have, if a book called Strongmen shouldn't just have right-wing people in it. She should have talked about Stalin. She should have talked about Mao, which shows strong ideological biases of the author. Next book is Escape from Freedom, Erich Fromm. He was a really influential political and psychological writer in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He wrote a ton of books. This is the first book I read from him, which was pretty good. He tries to explain the psychology behind fascism and totalitarianism using kind of psychological standpoint. It was not bad. Next book is called Gangsters of Capitalism. This book is by Jonathan Katz. This is a top 10 recommendation. It's about a soldier named Smedley Butler who was involved in many imperialist projects around the turn of the 20th century, in the Philippines and China, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, and this book clearly demonstrates the historical record of imperialist control by the United States and how the United States is, in deed and in name, an imperialist country. Wherever You Go, There You Are is the next book by John. Sorry, I can't see it. John Zinn. This book is about meditation, and I really liked it. If you're looking for kind of a brief book about how to explore a meditation practice, if that's something you do, definitely check it out. Really, really enjoyed it. Next book is Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. He's a famous writer. He wrote, The Tipping Point, and he writes a bunch of books like, what is it called? Outliers. This is his newest book. This basically was just like a long podcast. There's nothing rigorous about the book. It's all anecdote and speculation, which is not bad. I mean, it's a good book. The main thesis of the book is that epidemic events are usually driven by a minority of super spreaders. He uses a lot of examples like COVID, super spreaders, bank robbers, opiate epidemic, teen suicides, how zeitgeist changes. It's a really good book. It literally is just a podcast. It has the same production, has music and stuff. It's just a long podcast. But it was good. Last nonfiction book is called All About Love by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is an amazing feminist, compassionate feminist writer. And this book is about what real love is in relationships. And I definitely recommend it. Okay, those are all the nonfiction books. Okay. Sorry, I know I move fast. I hope it was helpful. You can pick and choose what you like. You can follow me on Goodreads. So I'm an author as well, and I write. The way I go about my book, so I read books, and then I take notes in my phone about the books that I'm reading or listening to, and then I write a review I write reviews for myself because it helps me retain the information. And I can go back, 5 years ago and be like, what was that book about? And I read the review, and it jogs my memory right away, and it's awesome. And I have a Goodreads account where I put I really should make a blog. I really should. And have my reviews on a blog. Just for myself. And for anybody else. That really is what I need to do. That's just going to take a lot of work to if anybody has any ideas about how to do that, to take all of my Goodreads reviews and turn it into a blog, or if anybody listener would like to do that for me, and I would pay you, seriously, let me know. If you want to create a blog for me and do that, like a writing blog or a review blog, that would be great. But please email me at icudrecmo, ecmo@gmail.com, and let's talk, because I need a blog, a repository for all my reviews and thoughts and stuff. I should probably create a Discord account as well for people that listen to this. I should do that. So we can have a dialogue with the audience and me. Anyway, my pen name is Wick Welker, W-I-C-K Welker, W-E-L-K-E-R, and you can follow me on Goodreads. You can look at my reviews and follow me. We can be pals on there. Anyway, and you can look at my lists of all the my bookshelves, and you can read all my reviews for all these books. Okay, let's switch to fiction. If you don't care about fiction, you can say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. But let's proceed. All right, I'm gonna move fast. First book is called Long Chills in Keisto by Brandon Sanderson. This is a tiny novella that he gave for free with his secret novel project. It's not very good. It's a noir book. He tries to be funny. He's not. I love Brandon Sanderson, but this you don't need to read this. Although it's short, it's just not. I'll just gloss over that. Next book is Isaac Asimov for The Foundation. This was me finishing out the Foundation series again. It's 7 books. He's one of my favorite sci-fi readers. I started him he got me into sci-fi when I was like 15. And I watched The Apple Show. The Foundation, which I thought was pretty good, and it made me go back to reread the books. They stand up. They're awesome. It is really, really, really good sci-fi. Really amazing concepts, groundbreaking. It was written in the 50s, so there's sexism and racism and stuff. Not terrible, not vulgar or anything gratuitous, but it's there. But I recommend you read all of the Foundation series again, if you haven't. Next one is System Collapse by Martha Wells. She writes the Murderbot series. I believe this was her latest book. Murderbot is awesome. It's about an AI who is hilarious, who watches basically the equivalent of Netflix to self-medicate, and is introverted and reluctantly helps out a band of humans throughout a corporate kind of interstellar oligarchy. It's phenomenal. You have to read it. I think it's probably going to be a series on Apple and stuff. You got to read Murderbot. I found the last one I read. I don't think I'm going to read any more books by her, because not by her, but in this series, because they're all kind of the same now, and they kind of blur together. So I don't think I'm going to read any more. But that was like the 7th book or something. Next book is Songs of Susanna by Stephen King. So this was me finishing up the Dark Tower series, which is 7 books long, and it is a journey. Okay, it is a journey. The Dark Tower, because some books I liked, some I didn't, and I finished the series last year. Some books I liked, some I didn't. It is a series that the the sum of the series is greater than its parts. Because when I finished the last book, which is called Dark Tower, I was blown away. I've never read anything like it. It defies definition. It's its own genre. It's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's western, it's found family. It's meta. It has interdimensional stuff, but it works. Why? Because the characters are freaking awesome, and I loved the ending. Lots of people didn't. Lots of people did. It's an amazing series. You'll never read anything like it. If you're ready to start a weird, wild journey, read The Dark Tower. Next one is Jade Shards by Fonda Lee. This is just a novella within the Bone Green saga of Fonda Lee's phenomenal series. The first one starts with Jade City. It's about a mob. It's like urban fantasy and what looks to be something inspired by Japan of like the 1990s. It's phenomenal. It's about a mob boss family, which is not quite my thing, but I kept going and I loved it. Really incredible characters, amazing drama. It's incredible. A very big series. You could definitely, now is the time to read the Greenbone saga if you haven't yet. Next book is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. She became prominent. She's a self-pub writer. She became prominent when she wrote The Sword of Kaigan, which if you're in the fantasy world, you've probably read and heard of. Anyway, this is what her last book called, The Blood Over Brighthaven, which is a dark academic fantasy book. It's good. It's kind of like R.F. Kuang's Babel book. These are very similar books in terms of like the plotting and the content, what they're about, and fighting imperialism and racism and sexism with a female lead. Oh, actually, Babel didn't have a female lead. But anyway, Blood Over Brighthaven was very good. I felt like it was slightly contrived and a little heavy-handed, but it's good. It's good. You should check it out. Next book is Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. He's awesome. Adrian Tchaikovsky is definitely becoming one of my favorite sci-fi writers. We follow each other on Blue Sky. By the way, I'm on Blue Sky with my author account, Wick Welker. You can find me on Blue Sky, Wick Welker. I don't do medicine stuff, okay? I don't do that. I don't do the ICU doc stuff on social media anymore at all. But I do for my author stuff. So you can follow me on Blue Sky, Wick Welker. Adrian Tchaikovsky's an awesome guy. Elder Race is a really good brief novella that if you've never read him, you could definitely start with this book. It's I don't even want to talk about it because it's so good. Just check it out. It's awesome. Next book is called The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. This is a 4-part series that I finished. It's Asian high fantasy. It's a take on the Han Dynasty, but it's got fantasy elements. It's incredible. It's one of the best series I've ever read. Period. It's called The Dandelion Dynasty, and The Wall of Storms was the 3rd book. And then I finished this series. If you're looking for a meaty, dense book, a series, it's 4 books that will blow your mind with its drama, its trauma, its with very violent, incredible characters, political intrigue, war. This is the book for you. The series, Dandelion Dynasty. Definitely read it. Next book, I reread Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, which highly influenced me when I was a teenager, and I read it again. I was a little disappointed, to be honest. I found the prose was terrible, and the characters were highly underdeveloped, and the concepts were kind of like, I mean, it's a great book, but like, it's just disappointing. All the cultures on Mars are just rebranded 1950 Earth culture. It's really, I didn't find it to be that creative, but now that I read it as later in my life. Next book is The Martian by Andy Weir. I never read this. I saw the movie, I liked it, and I read Project Hail Mary, which was phenomenal. And then I finally went and read The Martian. It's incredible. It's just phenomenal. It's an absolutely amazing book. You know all about it, I'm sure. Read or reread it because, wow. Next book is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. If you have not read her, you definitely need to read her. The Lathe of Heaven is a standalone. It's a good place to start. It's about a guy whose dreams change reality, and when he wakes up, they've changed it, and a psychologist who tries to use that power and to manipulate reality. It's awesome. You need to read her. Other books that you need to read by her are The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed, and then her Earthsea Cycle, which I'm almost done finishing. Next one, I reread The Hobbit, which stands up. It's awesome. It's an amazing adventure. It's phenomenal. What else is there to say? I totally loved it. It's a masterpiece. Next one is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, which I reread. It's a series of short stories about artificial intelligence and robots and them trying to find their robot humanity. It's awesome. It's awesome. moving on. Sorry, I know I'm moving fast. I read The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, which is in his universe of the Dark Law. What is it called? The First Law. You may know the first book called The Blade Itself. It's awesome. It's totally awesome. And The Heroes is within that universe. I really, really liked The Heroes. Really liked The Heroes. It's just so good. Just the commentary, the war. I mean, this is the guy, Joe Abercrombie. He's like the, Lord of grimdark fantasy. But definitely read The Heroes if it's on your list. Next one is The Expert System's Brother, again by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read this in the sequel. These are short, kind of very short stories, novellas, about an outcast on a terraformed world in the future, and it's awesome. He's just so good. I cannot recommend Adrian Tchaikovsky enough. A good place to start with him is Children of Time, or his Final Architecture series. Next book is The Fall by Ryan Cahill. This guy's gained prominence. He's a self-pub writer. He also wrote what was that book? I'm forgetting. What's it called? I don't remember. A Blood and Ruins or something. He's gotten big in the fantasy world. I found this to be way too derivative and boring, and I didn't like it. And I read The Fall, and then I read the next book in the series, which I'm forgetting the name, and I stopped. I put the series down. It was too derivative and cliche. I didn't like it. It's called The Blood and Fire. Yeah. So I read those two, and I am not going to continue the series. I mentioned I reread 1984. I'll just gloss over that. Kindred by Octavia Butler. I've read her whole other series called Pattern Master series. She is a brutal writer, meaning she writes about brutal stuff, and she writes a lot about power dynamics between men and women and black and white people. Kindred is about a black woman in the 70s who goes back to like the 1820s or something, and spends time with her white ancestor who's a slaver who raped a black woman who is her ancestor. It is tense. It is a tense book, and it's really good. She's an awesome writer. I read Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. That's in her Farseer, or the what's it called? Elderling series, which is like 12 books. I read the first trilogy which is called the Farseer trilogy, which I loved. I didn't like the Ship of Magic very much. I honestly didn't, and I'm not going to finish this trilogy. I'm going to skip it. Yeah, I found it she's a phenomenal fantasy writer, Robin Hobb. She's awesome, but I found it way too, the pacing and it was such a slog, and it was just, I didn't like it. I'm not gonna lie, I did not like this book, but I will continue reading in this series. Moving on, throughout the year I read Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea Cycle, and like the Tombs of Atuan and The Farthest Shore. It's amazing. It is amazing. I can't believe the Earthsea Cycle is marketed as YA. It's not YA at all. The average teenager would find it way too boring. It's about feminism and power dynamics, and it's awesome. It is totally incredible. You gotta read the Earthsea Cycle. Just amazing. I read The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. That's part of his secret projects books. It is totally awesome. I loved it. You should read the Stormlight Archive, I think, before you read The Sunlit Man. It's really good. I read Blade Runner by Philip K. Dick. I've been in a Philip K. Dick hit. I'm actually reading Scanner Darkly right now. Hugely influential sci-fi writer, right? Minority Report, Blade Runner, Scanner Darkly, The Man in the High Castle. He wrote all that and more. I loved Blade Runner. I had never read it. Or it's also called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. It's really, really good. It's short. It'll blow your mind. It's about humanity. It's about, do robots have humanity? Where does humanity dwell? It's dystopic. It's post-apocalyptic. The atmosphere, the writing, nothing like it. It's a legend for a reason. Next book is The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex Haro. This is kind of a speculative fantasy fiction, which it was pretty good. Characters were good, but I felt like it was a little contrived, and it had contrived romances, and it had plot holes and easy fixes, which I did not like. I gave that one 3 stars, I think. Next one is A Spell for Chameleon by Piers Anthony. He's a classic fantasy writer from like the 70s. I went back and read this because I think it was one of the first fantasy books I read in elementary school, and I was like, and I remember it being like magical, and I liked it. So I went back to read it, And this book is terrible. It's terrible. Here's the reason it's bad. There is literally a random scene where the main character, he's on this like fantasy adventure to like try to get a magic, understand his magic or something. I forget. And he's suddenly dropped into a rape trial out of the blue where some guy is accused of rape and and the girl there, and he's a juror in the trial. It just has nothing to do with the story. And you're like, what? And the judge deems that the rape didn't happen because the victim knew the perpetrator. And so he dismisses the case. And then the book is full of tons of sexism and misogyny. It's terrible. I stopped reading it. Don't read it. It's bad. Don't read anything by it. Cancel him. I don't care. All right. Next book is called Empire of Science by Christopher Verrocchio. I started tackling, this is the Sun Eater series. I read the first book and 2 novellas and the second book. And I'm in the midst of reading this series right now. And I'll tell you, it's a winner. It's a space opera. It's huge. It's sprawling. Yes, it's derivative of Dune and kind of Rome culture, ancient culture, but it's awesome. It's good writing. It has a first-person POV. It's good. It's good. I highly, if you know what I'm talking about, the Sun Eater series, and you're on the table on the fence of starting it, I think you should. I haven't finished it, but I am liking it. I reread Brave New World, which I think I reviewed on this show. It's awesome. It's likely I think it's the most dystopic of all the dystopic classics. It most realistically models our current society. Okay, I read A Tide of Black Steel by Anthony Ryan. Me and him follow each other on Blue Sky. He's an awesome guy. He's a British writer. I've read like 7 or 8 of his books. He's just a great guy. He's one of my favorite contemporary fantasy writers. This is the first in a new series he's writing. If you've never read Anthony Ryan, I highly recommend you go and read Bloodsong first, and then you read his Covenant of Steel series before getting to A Tide of Black Steel. But you can start with A Tide of Black Steel also. This was his newest book, released last year. Next book is Philip K. Dick's Ubik, which is a super, again, crazy book about... It's short. I don't even know where to start with this book. He explores a lot of stuff like psychopathy, telepathy, living within a simulated reality. I don't even know where to begin with it, but I loved it. It was awesome. Next book is Lancelot by Giles Christian. This is I think I talked about this on the show. This is just a retelling of it's an Arthurian trilogy. It's the first book, and this is about Lancelot, and it's awesome. Such good writing, beautiful, beautiful characters, really good. Let's see. Next book it's called Rejection by Tony Talithimut, which is not sci-fi or fantasy, and it's a book it's got vignettes about modern day people right now and their romantic misadventures and how they are rejected. It has a lot of sexual scenes, gratuitous scenes that I did not like, and I almost stopped reading it, so you should not read it if that's going to bother you. However, if you can get past that, this is a wild, good book. Incredible writing, and it's all about how the pathologies a lot of people struggle with, and a lot of their pathologies come from discrimination against them to begin with. Like the fetishization of whatever their sexual preferences are get pathologized because they're not accepted and they're discriminated against, and they focus on those things. It also has an amazing vignette about social media, social engineering. Really good. Very unique book. Look into that. It's called Rejection. I read Stephen King's It, which I really, really loved, except for one pedophile orgy scene at the end of the book, which was bizarre and crazy and insane that's in there. It really is. And it soiled my experience of the entire book. I'll move on. I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I never read it. I did enjoy it. I found it too zany, a little too zany. It reminded me of Doctor Who a little too much, which I don't really like Doctor Who, because I feel like books like this and stories like Doctor Who, they use absurdity and zaniness in place of good story crafting. I know that's a controversial opinion, but I will not continue reading that series of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm almost done. I read Alien Clay by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is awesome. It's about an academic who's imprisoned by an authoritarian regime who goes to an alien planet to figure out to live in basically a prisoner camp to figure out what's going on with the alien life on this planet. And it is all about like anarchism versus fascism. It is phenomenal. And it's funny. It's awesome. That's a standalone. You could start Adrian Tchaikovsky with that book. Last one. I read The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlin. He wrote A Black-Tongue Thief, which is a fantasy book, which is absolutely phenomenal, which I loved. I did not like Daughter's War as much. I found it boring, weird storytelling, and I just didn't like it as much. Anyway, that's it. Okay, that's over 90 books. I know it was fast. I hope it was helpful and you enjoyed it. I think I'm done talking for today. I'll just read one listener email today. This is by Nancy with last name withheld. This is about book recommendations. Nancy says, I freely admit that I've only listened to one episode, and that's the most recent. I think it was, which book was it? Which episode? I don't remember. Having said that, she makes 3 book recommendations. So let's hear Nancy's book recommendations. First one I've read at least a dozen times, and it's to the point. It's in several pieces, called The Nazi Doctors by Robert J. Lifton. I haven't read that book. It looks good. She then recommends 2 more books. Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire by Kurt Anderson is just nuts, and I've listened to it 3 or 4 times since 2017. I have read that book, and it is awesome. If you want to understand crazy American culture and why it's that way, read that book. And then she says, the third one is a recommendation based a bit on the current episode because you touched on the hidden empire of the USA as well as some other historical references. And the book is How to Hide an Empire, A History of the Great United States by Professor Daniel Emeroir, which I have also read. You definitely want to read that book. And she gives us those book recommendations. So thank you, Nancy. I think those are right in line with lots of stuff I like to read. Okay, I'm done. You can email me at icudrecmo@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, or just want to reach out. And you can, my TikTok and Instagram accounts are still up. I don't create content on them anymore, but you can, I leave the content up. If you want to go look at all the videos that I've posted, on TikTok, it's ICU Doctor. And on Instagram, it's ICU Doctor TikTok. And then I'm on Blue Sky with my author account, Wick Welker. WICKWELKER. You can follow me on Blue Sky. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review to help this podcast grow, and have a good one. Thank you.